The woman looked up at the sky. The moon was full, sitting alone in a throne of darkness, a haloed orb dooming the stars to oblivion. Its glow fell like silver dust on the world. A cloud floated by, blurring the sharp silhouette of the circle, but failing to efface the light. The woman kept her eyes on the moon, but her vision stole her sight. Cold chilled her to the bone, though it was not cold that made her shiver. The moon emerged, radiant and proud, a queen in the kingdom of the night. Just like the moon, it was time they merged once more. It would all begin with that child, and the world would know true power as it had ages ago. The halo shimmered, slowly tinging pink, then blood red. Crimson seeped to the moon, turning it into a pond of blood. She blinked, and the moon was as it should be once again. A sigh slipped past her lips, thick fog in the bitter night. It is time. Welcome to Lupus Private University. I looked up at the sign. Elegant black characters over a white background. The rumble of the bus driving away disturbed the otherwise quiet area. I was surprised a bus even made it this far, considering the school was practically in the middle of the woods. I peeked through the barred gate. The paved road stretched inside the walls of the school, but there was nothing but trees as far as the eyes could see. Just how big was this place? I made my way to the security booth next to the gate, dragging my suitcase and adjusting the strap of my duffel bag. It kept slipping off my shoulder. I reached the security booth and tapped on the small window. It opened after a few seconds, revealing a middle-aged man with smiling hazel eyes and graying hair. He blinked, looking from one of my eyes to the other. I smiled politely. It was the same reaction whenever I met someone new. "Yes?" he finally said. "Hi. I'm a new student here?" I said. "Your papers, please," he asked with a kind smile. I put down my luggage and fumbled in my bag for the papers. They must take security quite seriously around here. I handed him my ID, my acceptance letter, and a few documents that were sent to me a couple of weeks earlier. "Miss White." He looked between me and the papers, the crow feet at the corner of his eyes accentuated by his smile. "Welcome. Please, come in." "Thank you." The small door near the main gate slid open automatically. I dragged my luggage through it. The security agent met me on the other side. He was taller than I expected, around 6 feet, and very well built for someone his age. He was dressed in a gray polo shirt with the logo of the university on his chest, cargo pants, and black boots. The short sleeves of his top strained against his muscled arms. "A vehicle is coming to pick you up," he said, handing me back my papers. "Please have a seat." He waved to a bench at the edge of the paved road, cutting through the trees. He helped me with my luggage and stood nearby as I perched on the wooden bench. A soft morning breeze blew a red curl in front of my face. I tucked it behind my ear and took in my surroundings. The world was turning into orange as autumn took over summer. Auburn leaves lined the side of the road, but I could see the stubborn verdure deep in the woods, where the trees were evergreen giants that never shed their green cloaks. There was no sign of people nearby, no building in sight. The only noise was the twittering of birds and rustling of trees. Just how deep in the woods were the school grounds, actually? "You are a freshman, right?" I looked back at the man and nodded. "Yes, it's my first year." "Welcome, then. I hope you'll like it here," he said with a warm smile. "Thank you," I smiled back. I hoped I would like it here too. "Is the school far from here?" "It takes around 15 minutes by car," he said, scratching his chin. "The vehicle will drop you near the campus. Everything is located there. School buildings, some shops and other facilities. A guide who'll show you around." Right then, a small Mercedes van stopped right next to us. I greeted the man who helped me put my luggage in the trunk, then settled in the back seat after waving the King's security guard goodbye. The driver wasn't much of a talker. He left me to my thoughts while I stared out of the window. Lupus University was one of the most prestigious educational institutions worldwide. People come from all over the world to study here. Besides the ridiculously expensive fee, the admission criteria were very complex and unpredictable. I was still amazed I actually managed to snag a full scholarship. I was one of 50 students chosen every year among thousands to be granted a full ride. Soon, we reached what I assumed was the campus. Several buildings stood around, but the greenery was still prevalent. The car parked in the road in front of a big building, right behind another vehicle. The driver and I exited the car as one. He was kind enough to get my luggage out of the trunk. "Thank you," I said, heaving the duffel bag. He nodded at me. "You're welcome." He motioned to the building. "This is the guide office. They'll help you to your cabin. Good luck." I didn't even have the time to thank him before he was driving away. Thanks, I whispered, looking at the speeding car. Wait, did he say cabin? I was supposed to stay in the dorms. I looked back to the building. People were coming in and out of the two-story structure. The main road branched off to several streets, which were lined by rows of identical small log cabins. It looked like a suburb rather than a school campus. The guide office was buzzing with activity. Students were trickling in and out, chatting among each other or with the staff. Most were accompanied by their families. An older woman was fussing over a guy near the door. The boy just groaned and kept nodding. I smiled despite the pang of sadness. The sight warmed my heart. I managed to find my guide. The old woman gave me a map of the school grounds, my schedule and keys to my cabin. Apparently, the living quarters consisted of a cabin I would share with another girl. The thought excited me. This school was something else. On the way to my cabin, the guide pointed out different facilities. There was a cafeteria, a few shops, a fully equipped gym, and a library. Peeking above the trees in the distance were the school buildings where classes would be held. She stopped in front of one of the two-story cabins. There was a small white car parked on the road in front of it. "Here you are, Miss White," the guide said, pointing to the cabin. "I believe your roommate is already here. I'll leave you to it. If you need anything, you know where to find me." I thanked her and made my way to my new home for the following year. The stone path cut through the green grass of the front yard, ending in a couple of steps that led up to a white-painted door. Should I knock or just use my key? I didn't want to make a bad first impression, so I took a deep breath and knocked 3 times. I heard footsteps coming from the other side of the door and tried to smooth my unruly hair. The door was pulled open to reveal a girl. She looked a couple of years older than me, and she was stunning. Her raven black hair flowed down to her waist, smooth tan skin, feminine curves hugged by a simple white tank top and black running shorts, full smiling lips and cat-like brown eyes that looked at me expectantly. I blinked. Heat crawled up my face when I realized I was checking her out without even an introduction. Not that checking her out after introducing myself would have been okay. Hi. I smiled, waving my hand awkwardly. Hi? Way to make a good first impression. She laughed softly, then waved back. Hi. Can I help you with something? I was told this was my cabin, I replied, adjusting the strap sliding down my shoulder again. Oh, I guess we're roommates then. Her smile widened. She looked at my baggage. Here, let me help you with that. She picked up my heavy suitcase like it was a feather and walked inside. My brows hiked up my forehead. Wow. She must lift weights. I stepped inside and closed the door. The cabin was cozy, with dark wooden floors and cream-colored walls. An open kitchen stretched to the left, with dark green cupboards and a small island with 3 stools. To the right, next to a fireplace, was a beige couch and 2 armchairs on either side of it. A flat screen was on top of the mantel, and right below the staircase was a door that must lead to a guest bathroom. The rooms must be upstairs. The sun filtered in through the 2 big windows on either side of the front door, identical to 2 windows that sandwiched a back door. The abundance of natural lighting made the place cheerful and warm. Welcome, I'm Ashley. She smiled, holding out one hand. I shook her hand. Her skin was quite warm considering what she was wearing. Lucky her. I was in a sweater and jeans, and my limbs were freezing. I was a perpetually cold person. I'm Orla. Nice to meet you. I smiled, setting the duffel bag next to my suitcase. Ashley's dark eyes were fixed on mine. I looked around awkwardly. After a few seconds, I cleared my throat. She blinked and then shook her head, her face apologetic. Sorry, it's just... She waved her hand to my face. You have unique eyes. Thanks? It's a compliment. She rushed out. You have lovely eyes. Thank you. I smiled. I had heterochromia. My left eye was a pale frost blue color, and my right eye was a dark brown. The contrast between the 2 colors was very pronounced. As a child, the reactions of the other kids varied from fear to fascination. Mostly fear. The adults just tended to stare. As I grew older, I learned to deal with the extreme reactions. People staring at my eyes still made me uncomfortable, but I understood. It was an unusual sight. If someone had eyes like mine, I'd probably stare too. The rooms are upstairs, Ashley said, picking up my suitcase again. You don't have to. It's heavy. I trailed off as she skipped up the steps with it. She paused at the top of the staircase and glanced at me. She chuckled. I exercise. A lot. Weightlifting. I knew it. I started up the steps with the duffel bag, huffing and puffing the entire way. I should probably start exercising too. Ashley waited patiently for me next to one of the 2 doors on the 2nd floor. I gave her a winded grin. I should probably start working out, I said. Right now, my exercise consists of the necessary trip to the convenience store when I run out of chocolate, she laughed. Chocolate is always a good motivator, right? I liked her already. She had her priorities straight. This is your room, she said, waving me inside. Mine is next door. There's a walk-in closet and a bathroom, so you have your privacy. Why don't you settle down first? Lunch is still a couple of hours away. Do you know the way? The guide did give me a map, but... We'll go together then. Thank you. I smiled at her back as she skipped downstairs, her silky hair dancing behind her. She seemed very nice. I stepped into my room with my luggage and closed the door behind me. The walls were a pale blue color. The one facing the door had a large window with light green curtains. On the far right of the room, pushed against the wall, was a queen-size bed with a turquoise comforter draped on it. 2 nightstands in a pale green color on either side of the bed. A white vanity was against the wall left of the bed. A white desk and a rolling chair were pushed under the window. I loved the light colors. I threw myself on the bed, bouncing a little. I was finally here. I could hardly believe it. I pulled my phone from my pocket. No missed calls, no messages. She didn't even check on me. I pushed the familiar disappointment aside and sat up. Plastering a smile on my face, I left my room and went downstairs. Ashley was leaning against the kitchen counter, drinking from a white mug with a line drawing of a puppy on it. Coffee? She asked, lifting the mug. I'm good, thank you, I said, perching on the stool by the island. After our earlier introduction, I expected the mood to be awkward. It wasn't. Ashley told me about herself. She was a sophomore, majoring in human resource management. She was surprised to know I was a scholarship student, and she teased me about being a nerd in a good-hearted manner. She had a mature air about her, but once in a while a playful streak would peek through, which made her more approachable. There was a knock on the back door, then it was pushed open without waiting for permission, and a guy burst in. Ash, I have arrived! He paused when he saw me, his hand on the open door. He narrowed his clear blue eyes my way, and a slow grin split his pale cheeks covered in a light scruff as black as his hair. He looked older, maybe in his mid-20s. Well, 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 what do we have here? He said, his voice smooth and velvety. Sam, this is Orla, my roommate, Ashley said. Orla, Sam, he's a friend. But I highly suggest you don't associate yourself with him. My wide eyes swung her way. She looked completely serious, if not for the glint of laughter in her eyes. Hey, Sam said, walking inside and pushing the door close with his foot without looking. You wound me, Ash, and here I thought I was your favorite. My favorite pain in the ass, Ash grumbled into her coffee. My lips twitched up, but I pressed them together and swallowed my smile. Laughing would be rude, right? Sam plopped down on the stool beside me. He was tall, with lean muscles and a flawless, confident demeanor. Orla, huh? He asked, turning in his seat to look at me with a grin. You must be new, since I would have definitely noticed such a beauty before. I blinked, feeling my cheeks warm. Thanks. So, Ash, I haven't seen Zach and Ezra around, Sam asked. Something came up, she said, taking a sip of her coffee. They'll be here soon, according to what Zach said when he called. Zach is Ash's boyfriend, Sam said, looking at me. He's next door, so he'll be visiting a lot. If things get loud, you can crash in my cabin. It took me a second to get his meaning, and when I did, I covered my face. Ash groaned. Sam. What? I'm just being helpful, he said, a smile in his voice. You got any drink for me? Nothing you like, Ash said with a pointed look. I touched my cheeks. They were still ablaze. Sam glanced at me and chuckled. You're easy to tease, Little Red. Little Red? I mumbled. Ash chuckled. Very original, Sam. What? She's pretty red and pretty tiny, he said. Hey, I take offense to that, I said. I knew I was tiny, but that didn't mean I liked people pointing it out. There you go. I knew there was a little fire in there, Sam said with a satisfied smile. Just be yourself, Little Red. I don't bite, Unless you want me to, of course. Ash choked on her drink. I gave Sam a weird look. I didn't know what to make of him. He seemed playful, but there was a sharpness in his eyes that made it clear he wasn't as flippant as he liked people to believe. Maybe I was just reading too much into it. So, what are you majoring in? Sam asked, leaning his arm on the island, still facing me. Botany, I said with a small smile. He squinted. Interesting, I chuckled. It's okay. You don't have to act interested, I said. I know most people find it pretty boring. Well, whatever floats your boat, Little Red. What about you? I asked him. This time around, I'm majoring in cannabis biology and chemistry. I laughed, until I realized he was serious. Clearing my throat, I looked at his amused face. Really? Yep, Ash replied, putting her mug in the sink behind her. They keep creating new majors just so that I don't get bored, Sam said. What? Wait, what did he mean this time around? Before I could ask, there was a knock on the door. Whoever knocked waited until Ashley called "come in" before coming in. At least he's not rude, I mumbled. It just slipped out. I glanced at Sam. Thankfully, he didn't look offended. Ash laughed out loud. Sam wagged a finger at me. Little Red, you're getting a little too comfortable. I grinned. Well, itis me cabin. Sam laughed and looked over my shoulder at the guy who walked in. Zach, about damn time. Hey, Zach breathed out, looking winded. He opened his arms and Ashley walked into his hug. He kissed the side of her head and buried his nose in her hair. Ah, they're adorable. The guy was around 6'2", as tall as Sam and built like a boxer. His muscles were emphasized by a snug gray t-shirt. His brown locks were pushed back, showing dark blue eyes. He glanced between me and Sam. Ashley turned to us, still tucked in his side. This is Zach. Zach, this is Orla, my roommate. Nice to meet you, I said with a smile. Likewise, he replied. Where'd you leave His Highness? Sam asked. Ashley scowled at him. He shrugged. His Highness? I asked. A nickname, Ashley said quickly. Oh, he's coming, Zach said. He's been feeling a little restless the past few days, so we went for a run earlier. You're next door again this year? Sam asked. Yeah, Zach said with a broad smile. He looked down at Ashley with a soft smile. Can't go very far from this one. See, Little Red, Sam said, nudging me with his elbow. They're all over each other. My offer to crash at my cabin still stands. Ugh, Ashley grumbled. Zach only looked amused. He came closer and fist-bumped Sam. My face was on fire at this point. Someone knocked on the front door. I got it, I said, making my escape to cool myself down a little. Sam was incorrigible, and it hadn't even been an hour since I met him. I pulled open the front door, and my embarrassment flew out the window. My mind blanked. Wide, dark brown eyes stared at me as if in shock. A soft breeze blew. Rippling waves of silky, short black hair brushed back from his face. Everything blurred, except those dark, dark eyes. I blinked, and his features cleared up. My heart fluttered at the handsome face. The guy had a strong jawline, a broad forehead, and a straight nose above firm lips parted. I was craning my neck to look up at him because he was much taller than me, and much bigger. The plain black t-shirt and sweats fitting his muscled frame did nothing to tone down his sheer size. Absolute shock and disbelief colored his gaze. He shook his head slightly as if he couldn't believe his eyes. Orla? I jumped. Ashley's voice snapped me out of my daze. I peeled my gaze from his eyes, blinking repeatedly. I looked over my shoulder at her, then back to him. Can I help you? I asked, unsure. It was as if my voice snapped him out of his thoughts. His nostrils flared, and he clenched his eyes shut tightly before letting out a ragged breath. When he opened his eyes again, my breath caught in my throat and my brows furrowed in concern. His dark brown eyes held so much pain and sadness it almost brought tears to my eyes. My throat tightened. What was wrong with me? Ezra? Zach asked from behind me, making me turn to look at him. Sam, Ashley, and Zach were all on their feet, looking between the two of us in confusion. Zach's eyes settled on the new guy, Ezra, for a long moment before he sucked in a sharp breath and whipped his head to gape at me with wide eyes. Is something wrong? I asked slowly. A low growl startled me. I whipped my head back toward the door only to find it empty. What the heck? My face scrunched up in confusion. I stepped out of the door and looked left and right just as I heard a door slam shut nearby. What was that? Was it a dog? And where in the world was the guy who had just knocked? A gasp sounded behind me, and I looked to find Ashley staring at me with wide, disbelieving eyes, her hand covering her mouth. Sam's eyes flickered between the two of them, then a smug grin stretched his face as he fixed me with his twinkling blue gaze. Well, what an interesting turn of events, he said slowly. Things might not be so boring around here with you after all, Little Red. What the heck just happened? Ezra's point of view, damn wolf. I'd been feeling restless for days. I went hunting 3 times in the past week and went for more runs in my fur than I could remember, but my beast just wouldn't settle down. I ran toward the cabins. Branches and twigs snapped under my paws, and the woods critters scurried away. I shifted back to my skin mid-jump and pulled a pair of shorts from a tree burrow where we kept them, quickly putting them on before walking the rest of the way on 2 feet. The last thing I needed was a human stumbling upon my wolf in the woods. Although we had magic barriers, one could never be too careful. I emerged from the edge of the trees toward the back of my cabin. I paused, raising my nose to the wind, and took a deep whiff. There was something in the breeze, the hint of a scent, there and then gone, that made my instincts snap into focus. I looked around and took deep breaths. But nothing stood out. I frowned. Did I just imagine it? Shaking my head, I made my way into my cabin and took the stairs 2 at a time. My wolf just growled in the back of my mind, pacing around in circles. Zach was probably in the cabin next door with Ashley, his mate. The word instantly sent an intense surge of pain through my chest. My wolf whined, but I pushed him back and jumped into a cold shower. Maybe the cold water would help clear my head. Zach and I got held back in the pack this morning for some business. It didn't turn out to be a big deal, however, so we headed here earlier than expected. Luckily for Zach, he went to surprise his mate, while I took my wolf out on a run, hoping to calm down. He'd been more cranky than usual today. It was as if he was anticipating something, and I had no idea what it was. After I dried off, I went into my closet and pulled on a black t-shirt and sweats. Everything in the closet was black. Everything had been black since that cursed day. Some days, I still woke up in the morning wondering why the moon decided to save my cranky ass and not them. Some days, I wondered if things would have been different had they been alive. If things would have been better. I pushed back the pain behind my usual wall of coldness and made my way downstairs for coffee. But a quick look in the kitchen told me there was no coffee to be had. We hadn't gone grocery shopping yet. I sighed. I would just have to get it from one of the coffee shops. I patted my pockets. Damn it. I didn't have my wallet or my phone. I growled under my breath, annoyed with myself and my wolf, and hit the front door. Zach would be at Ashley's. As soon as I stepped outside, my wolf stopped pacing. I froze, sniffing the air. It was that smell again, except it was much stronger. I tilted my head and followed the thread of the sweet scent to Ashley's cabin. The closer I got, the faster my heart beat. My stomach tightened, and my wolf howled in my mind. He was trying to tell me something, but the scent was all my senses could focus on. What was wrong with me? I knocked on the door, my hand moving on its own. Deep breaths. I couldn't get enough of it. The world retreated to the background, and blood rushed to my ears. A movement inside, followed by the most addictive voice I had ever heard. I got it. The word was a whisper on the edge of my mind. It got clearer as the person on the other side of the door got closer. My heart pounded faster and harder, and my blood felt like molten lava running through my veins. A bead of sweat trickled down my back. What was happening? The whisper got louder. My wolf howled in the back of my mind. It couldn't be. The door cracked open. The scent became so strong it was all I could feel. I stared at the door, wide-eyed with shock and disbelief, as it opened to the most beautiful creature I had ever seen. My heart rose to my throat, our gazes locked, and something snapped into place with a resounding click. Mate. Long red hair tumbled down her back and over her shoulders in wild waves, a fiery halo surrounding her pale, radiant skin, almost matching the redness of her plump lips and the flush on her cheeks. She looked at me with a hypnotizing gaze, mismatched eyes that words couldn't describe, a brown so dark and a blue so pale they seemed to see deep into the darkest corners of my soul. I breathed in more of her scent. It almost knocked me off my feet. Someone spoke in the background, but nothing else mattered. I couldn't take my eyes off her. I was so afraid she might disappear, that I was just hallucinating, Or that I died and she was an angel guiding me to the moon. Because she definitely looked like an angel. She was otherworldly. She was not supposed to exist. I had been forcing myself to get used to the thought of not having her, ever since that cursed day. Ever since he took them and cursed me to forever be without the other half of my soul. But I did. I found her. She was right here. My wolf shoved to the forefront of my mind, trying to push me toward her. She looked back inside the house, then back at me. Can I help you?" she asked, and I had to clench my eyes shut and push my wolf back, because the sound of her voice just made me want to pull her to me. I clenched my fists so hard I could feel my nails drawing blood from my palms. I had to control myself. My wolf was pushing me toward her, but I couldn't. Not yet. Her enticing smell reminded me that she was a human. She didn't know anything about us. She was a human. The thought made me open my eyes and look at her small, fragile frame, a human who would get hurt easily. A human I could easily lose. A familiar pain flared in my chest at the thought. Her features suddenly etched in worry as she looked at me with those eyes. God, those eyes. "Ezra?" Zach's voice registered to my ears, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from her. I found myself wishing she spoke again. She turned to look behind her, and I mourned the loss of her eyes. My wolf whined in my mind, pushing me forward. "Dude, what's wrong?" Zach's voice filled my head. I finally tore my gaze away from her and looked at him. He, Ashley, and Sam were looking between the two of us in confusion. "She's the one, Zach. She's my mate." I mind-linked him, speaking telepathically as only supernaturals could. His eyes widened. He whipped his head toward her, slack-jawed, staring in disbelief at her like she was a miracle. And she was. My miracle. "Is something wrong?" she asked slowly. Still looking at Zach. I couldn't stop the low growl that vibrated off my chest. God, that voice. I had to get out of here before I did something I might regret. I dashed to my cabin with an abnormal speed, not even caring if a human saw. I had to get my shit together. I slammed the door close behind me, breathing as if I'd just ran a marathon, then made my way out the back door and into the woods, breaking into a run. I didn't shift. If I did, my wolf would take over and go right to her. Wind whished past my ears, and my heart roared in thrill and fear. I just found my mate. But how? She wasn't supposed to exist. He made sure of it. I was cursed, damn it. My feet pumped on the forest ground, and I ran faster, trying to escape the memories. It was easier, maybe because of her. I doubled back when my head was relatively more clear and my wolf calmed down enough to know I was not going to barge into Ashley's in my fur. Dripping in sweat, I made my way to the shower upstairs and jumped under the cold water. I missed her scent already. I found Zach downstairs, leaning against the island with his arms crossed. He straightened up. I plopped down on the couch and held my head in my hands, staring mindlessly at the gray carpet. My hands were still shaking. Zach was one of the few people around whom I could let my guard down. We grew up together. He was my cousin, and he would be my second in the future. "Ezra," Zach said hesitantly, "are you sure she's—" I lowered my hands and glared at him. He held up his hands in surrender. I understood why he would think that. The curse was public knowledge in the supernatural world. It had happened in the same incident that shook the werewolf kingdom. But I couldn't mistake it. I couldn't mistake her. Just thinking about her made my skin twitch, my wolf pushing to take over again and go to her. I wouldn't last long. "How is he?" Zach asked as he sat down on an armchair. I rubbed the back of my neck, feeling fur prick at my fingers, still trying to break out of my skin, but calmer. I looked at Zach. He was biting back a smile, the bastard. I could almost feel his wolf jumping around, excited. "What?" he asked. "It's a pretty big deal, bro. I'm happy for you." "Thanks," I grunted, my fists clenched on my thighs. I couldn't help worrying about her. She was human, a fragile human. Zach sighed and leaned forward in his seat, his face turning serious. "I know what you're thinking, Ezra," he said. He knew me better than anyone else. "She might be human, but don't forget who you are." My shoulders eased a fraction. He was right. Of course, he was right. She was a vulnerable human, but I was the future alpha of the Regalis pack, the heir to the werewolf throne, and if anyone touched a hair on her head, I would show them hell on earth. My wolf growled in approval, and the memory of her beautiful eyes made my resolve grow tenfold. My little miracle. "So, what do you want to do about it?" Zach asked. "Nothing. For now. I answered firmly. I don't want anyone to know. No one but you, Ashley, Jason, and my father. Sam already knows. He figured it out on his own. Of course he did. But it might be a good thing. Sam was playful, and he adopted that devil-may-care attitude most of the time, but he was one of the few people, and the only vampire, I trusted to have my back. It's all right. He knows to keep quiet about it. Zach nodded. He'll also keep an eye out for his kind. You know what some of them did last year? A furious growl ripped through me. If any of those blood-sucking assholes touched her, I would rip out their fangs. Last year, a group of vampires attending school here were caught drinking from a human student. We found out later they had done it on several occasions, and after finishing their snack, they had compelled the human to forget about it. They had gotten away with it for almost 6 months. But after getting caught, they were expelled and then punished by their coven head. School laws prohibited supernatural students from doing any act that might endanger the secret of our existence. That included vampires drinking from humans on school grounds, witches using their magic, or werewolves shifting outside the magical boundaries in the woods. The number of humans who attended the school was very small compared to the supernatural students. Humans were accepted into the school in order to keep supernaturals from closing in on ourselves, and to acclimate the young supernaturals to life in the real world, where they would have to hide their identities. My muscles tensed and relaxed. I was itching to go to her. Zach looked at the ground, his eyes distant. He must be mind-linking. What is it? I asked. They're back from lunch, Zach said. Want to join them? My heart jumped. I wanted to. I wanted nothing more than to be permanently stuck by her side, just a little longer. I was still too fidgety. Not yet, I said. What's her name? Why don't you ask her yourself? He said, his smile mischievous. Asshole. He grinned. I felt a presence pushing inside my head. Then Sam's voice resonated through our link. Ezra, my man? Congratulations, he said in his annoyingly cheerful voice. I grunted in response. Oh, come on, Prince. Don't be so cranky. This is a day to be celebrated. I sighed and rubbed my temples. Just keep quiet about it for now. Don't worry, I'm not an amateur, he said. I'll keep quiet about it and make sure no one comes near her. So, starting today, I'm announcing myself as her personal bodyguard, I growled. Keep your damn distance, Sam. Oh, but it's too late, he chuckled. Little Red and I are already enjoying our intimate time together. I was out of the door in a second. Zach followed close behind me. That damn vampire. I knew he was just trying to get under my skin, but I couldn't help my reaction. Instead of ripping that door off its hinges like I wanted to, I stood for a few seconds in front of it and took a deep breath. Her scent lingered, helping to calm me. Zach looked immensely amused next to me. Sam's laughter inside spurred me to knock. A second later, Ashley opened. She smiled, her dark eyes twinkling. Come in, guys. I stopped short of the threshold, frozen in place by her powering scent and the sight of her sitting there looking like the miracle that she was. The world snapped into focus again, and I realized I was standing there staring at her like an idiot. I moved inside, taking deep breaths of her scent, craving more. It felt like breathing for the first time. She was sitting in an armchair, while Sam sat on the couch close to her, with a shit-eating grin that I wanted to slap off his face. Ashley sat next to her, Zach on the arm of the couch closest to his mate, which left me in the armchair across from her. Orla, this is Ezra, a friend, Ashley said with a smile. Orla. My tongue rolled out the name. It was perfect. I couldn't take my eyes off of her. My need to memorize the smallest details about her exceeded my need to not come off as a creep. Orla sent a small wave my way, her magnificent eyes flickering uncertainly between Sam and I. Is it okay that we're here, Ashley and I? She asked hesitantly. It took me a moment to get over the effect of her voice. When her words registered, my brows furrowed. What was she talking about? Why shouldn't you be here? Zach asked. Well, she glanced at Sam, who looked too smug. Sam said that Ezra has gynophobia. That's why he acted that way and ran away when I opened the door. Silence. Then Zach and Sam were convulsing with laughter. Gynophobia. I looked at Sam. I was going to kill him. Slowly. The damn vampire. Orla looked in confusion between Zach and Sam. Ashley shook her head, trying to be polite and bite back her smile. He was joking, Orla. Ezra is not afraid of women. Orla glared at Sam, a delicious blush rising to her cheeks. Jerk, she muttered under her breath. Her gaze flickered to me, and she gave me an apologetic smile, displaying a set of dimples. Sorry about that. I nodded, unable to find my voice. So, are you all sophomores? She asked. Yeah, Zach said. We can introduce you to some freshmen if you want. That would be nice. She smiled. I don't really know anyone around here. Don't you worry, Little Red, Sam said. I'll keep you company. Thanks, but I'll pass, Orla answered swiftly. Ashley and Zach laughed as Sam choked on air. I wanted to smile. The mischievous glint in her eyes was adorable. How come you're sophomores? You look older. Her eyes widened. I mean, in a good way. That is, you look more mature. Ashley laughed. Don't worry, we're not offended. And yes, we are 21. Except for Sam. We sort of took a break after high school. Oh, she looked at Sam. How old are you? 25, he said with a wink. Plus, minus a few years. Zach snorted. Ashley jabbed her elbow in his side. Sam was certainly not 25 years old. He was 565 years old. He wasn't the oldest of his kind, but he was still old even among vampires. So, you're a scholarship student? Zach asked. Orla nodded. Sam whistled. I'm surprised, Little Red. I didn't expect you to be that smart. I guess I was wrong. And I didn't expect you to be that smart. I guess I was right, Orla replied with a cheeky smile. Everyone laughed, including Sam. My lips twitched up involuntarily. I hadn't seen someone put Sam in his place in a while. So, what did you do in your break? Travel? Ash and Zach's gaze flickered to mine. Ash nodded hesitantly. Yeah, you could say that. Nice, Orla said, clearly impressed. Travel was not exactly what we had done. After finishing high school, werewolves usually went through pack training. The duration and contents of the training depended on the position of the wolf in the pack. For warriors, it consisted of hand-to-hand combat, fighting strategies and tactics, among other things. They, along with alphas and upper wolves, had the longest training periods. Mine took almost 5 years of training under my father and his closest subordinates even before I finished high school, then in another pack in Europe afterward. After pack training, wolves could choose to be active members of their packs, but they were usually encouraged to follow some form of higher education and a degree in order to help them blend in with humans when needed. For me, I followed a degree in business management. I would be taking over as president for the Regalis Group Corporation after my father retired. As conversation flowed, Orla glanced my way and realized I was staring. She smiled and shifted in her seat, her eyes flickering away, then back again. I looked away. I was making her uncomfortable, but I couldn't keep my eyes from seeking her again. Ashley stood and stretched her arms up with a groan. Zach rubbed her back. I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired of being inside and I want some coffee. How about we go out? Orla was still sitting. Ashley looked at her with a smile. Come on, Orla. Orla smiled in something close to relief. She jumped to her feet, and Ashley linked their arms together. We strolled to the common room, a space on the ground floor of the cafeteria building. Ashley gave me a wink and moved so Orla was walking beside me. My heart was beating wildly in my chest, and I couldn't help but steal glances at her as she spoke with Ashley, her face animated and the fiery halo of her hair dancing in the soft autumn breeze. My hand twitched. I wanted to touch her skin, see if it was as soft as it looked. I relished in the proximity of her body, taking deep, subtle whiffs of her scent. Her small size reminded me of her vulnerability. Eyes ahead, Your Highness. Sam mumbled in a low voice next to me. I gave him a long look. His grin was unrepentant. Students were still coming in with their luggage. School would only start next Monday, after the bonfire weekend. Almost everyone we passed by would pause in their tracks to give us respectful nods. Some of the new students would look at us with wide eyes, as if they were seeing royalty, which, technically, they were. Why are they looking at us like that? Orla whispered to Ashley, nodding toward a group of students. They were freshman wolves whose saucer eyes were fired on us. As soon as I turned my attention to them, their eyes flickered down, and they nodded in greeting. Meeting an alpha's eyes head-on was considered a challenge. Usually, wolves would look down, then wait for the alpha to acknowledge their submission before meeting his gaze. It was an instinct that came naturally to werewolves. Why? They're entranced by our stunning good looks, of course, Sam said matter-of-factly. Orla pursed her lips, but her cheeks dimpled and a smile peeked through. Remember I told you about me being on the student council? Ashley said. Orla nodded. Ezra and Zach are also members of it. Orla's eyes flickered up to meet mine, her pink lips in an O shape. My breath caught in my throat. Looking in her eyes from such a close distance, I couldn't help but be transfixed by the view. Her eyes were such a beautiful contrast. She blinked, then looked down, her hair doing nothing to hide the flush on her cheeks. My fingers twitched. The common room was mildly crowded. The several seating arrangements around the large space were mostly occupied. The bar counter stretched on one side of the space, across the stairway that led to the cafeteria upstairs. We headed to an unoccupied corner of the bar counter, where a female werewolf sat on one of the stools, tapping on her phone. She looked up when we approached, sitting up straighter. She dipped her head my way, her eyes flickering to Orla next to me. "Hey, Sarah," Ashley said, taking the stool closest to her. She turned to Orla. "This is Sarah. She's also a freshman." "Oh," Orla smiled. "Nice to meet you." "I'm Orla." "Nice to meet you," Sarah said, her smile reserved and unsure. A human with a group of highly ranked wolves and a powerful vampire was not a common sight. We settled down at the counter. I sat down next to Orla, and the girls fell into an easy conversation. Zach and Sam were speaking as well, and I had no clue what they were talking about. All my senses were attuned to the girl next to me. Her voice was a siren song to my ears. She glanced at me. I was staring again. "Look away," I told myself. "You're freaking her out." But I couldn't. I didn't want to. She smiled at me. A genuine smile that made me want to smile back. "All right. What do you want, girls?" Ashley said out loud, leaning on the counter to look at Sam with a smirk. "Sam's paying." Sam rolled his eyes, then waved his hand. "Go ahead." The girls eyed the menu board stretched on the wall above the counter. Orla perked up, her smile excited. "One iced chocolate, please." Sam and Ashley laughed out loud. "Why am I not surprised?" Sam said, shaking his head. She leaned over the counter to stick her tongue out at him. "What do you mean?" Zach asked, as confused as I was. "She had 2 chocolate desserts for lunch, then a large cup of hot chocolate on our way back," Sam said. "She might be addicted." Orla narrowed her eyes at Sam. "Make it extra large iced chocolate, since Sam is paying." Ashley snickered, then waved over the waiter. The drinks arrived shortly after. As the room got busier, more people came by to greet us. I caught Orla glancing my way after the first 4 students who came to pay their respects. Orla had drawn the attention of many curious onlookers, the humans surrounded by royal pack wolves. I was very thankful for the fact that Orla was Ashley's roommate. If that hadn't been the case, her being with us would make people too suspicious. I didn't like the fact that I had to hide her identity, but I didn't want to tell her anything about the supernatural world until she got to know me a little better. And I didn't want to tell anyone about her until she knew everything about me. So, while I didn't appreciate how people were ogling her, I had to be patient and keep in mind she was still a human. When the room got too busy, we made our way back. The sunset fell in a soft orange glow on Orla's skin and made her hair look as if the strands were on fire. Ashley made sure she walked next to me again, for which I was grateful. And this time, she was a bit closer, as if she was getting used to my being next to her. We stopped next to our cabins. "See you guys at dinner," Ashley said, giving Zach a peck on his cheek. Orla glanced my way. The thought of being away from her already made my wolf lash out. She caught my eye and I couldn't breathe again. She was an ethereal sight with the setting sun behind her. Her eyes glimmered with an emotion I couldn't place. I could swear she saw through my stony front, right through the fragments of my broken soul, to my past pains and future hopes. I still couldn't believe I found her. Suddenly, I was afraid that this was just a dream, that I'd wake up in the morning to a world without her. It was a silly thought, but when you go for so long without hope, it becomes such a foreign feeling. She blinked again, then looked down, a thoughtful look crossing her face before she shook her head slightly, her head as if to clear her thoughts. She gazed at Zach and Sam, then at me before smiling. "See you later." With those 2 words, she followed Ash inside their cabin. I blinked hard, pushing my wolf back, but it wasn't just my wolf who pushed me toward her anymore. "Meeting after dinner?" Sam asked, making me wrench my gaze from the closed door. "Yes." "Zach, bring Jason with you," I ordered. Zach nodded in understanding as we made our way to our cabin. "I'll just stick around here then," Sam said, following us inside. I shrugged, heading to the back door. "Where to?" Zach called. "To see my father." I walked in my skin until I was past the spell's borders. The spell made sure humans couldn't see or venture past a certain point in the woods. As soon as I made it past the borders, I tore into my black wolf and dashed through the woods toward the pack. Regalis was the royal pack. The werewolf king ruled over all werewolves in the world, but he was also the alpha of the Regalis pack. The school grounds were on the edge of the royal packland. The pack village was much deeper in the woods, about a half-hour wolf run from the school ground. I searched in my mind for a familiar presence. "Dad?" I called through the link, and I felt him stir. "Yes, son? What is it?" "I need to talk to you. Are you home?" "No, in my office in the pack house. Is something wrong?" "No, I just have some news. I'll be there in 20. "All right." I picked up my pace, savoring the breeze rippling through my fur, until I was nothing but a dark blur zipping through the trees, rustling leaves like the wind. The sky grew darker, and the light shied away from the forest's thick vegetation. My mind constantly wandered to a certain red head with spectacular mismatched eyes. I had no idea how I was supposed to tell her about who I was, about our world, how to tell her that a world she only read about in fantasy books was indeed real, very real. But it didn't matter. I would find a way. She was mine as much as I was hers. Trees thinned out as I approached the edge of the forest. I shifted back and pulled on a pair of shorts. We kept clothes scattered in tree burrows all around the woods. Although we were part animal, prancing around butt naked wasn't very appreciated. Pack members dipped their heads at me as I walked through cabins until I reached a big, 3-story structure. The pack house. Staff scurried around from the kitchen to the dining hall, where dinner would soon be served. Their hurried steps muted against the wooden floors. I made my way to the 3rd floor, the Alpha's wing. "Come in," my father's voice called from the other side after I knocked on the double oak doors of his office. He looked up with dark, tired eyes and nodded to the chair in front of his desk. His black hair was disheveled, as if he had run his hands through it hundreds of times, and his jaw sported a short beard. He hadn't shaved in weeks. People around us always said that my brother Xander and I were carbon copies of our father, although my mom used to say our eyes were different. No one agreed with her, though. We all had similar dark brown eyes. I blinked back the pain and thought of the best way to break the news to my father. "Son?" He arched a brow at me in expectation. Well, the direct approach always suited me the best. My wolf agreed. I found my mate. Silence. Pin-drop silence. The only sound I could hear was my heart beating as my father stared at me, his eyes unblinking. After a few seconds, he opened his mouth, then closed it. Then he opened it again and closed it. Zach would kill to see this. I arched a brow at my father. He cleared his throat, then leaned on his desk, clasping his hands loosely on top of it. "Are you sure?" I bit back a growl. Why did they keep asking that? I understood why they would have a difficult time believing me, though. I had been cursed by the most powerful witch on the face of Earth. After all, he made sure I knew I would live without a mate. Although after news of his death had reached us a couple of years ago, some witches believed the curse would be broken, while the majority stood firmly by the opinion that the curse would remain, even after his death. I had believed the latter, refusing to give in to hope, so sure that I was cursed to eternity. How wrong I had been. "Positive," I firmly replied. "I wouldn't mistake that, Dad." A genuine smile graced my father's features, the first in so many years. He stood up and made his way around the desk, meeting me halfway and hugging me tightly to him. "Good," he choked out, patting my back. "Good. I'm happy for you, son." I swallowed the lump in my throat. My father let go of me and squeezed my shoulders. I saw something flash in his eyes, a glimmer of much-needed hope. "How?" he asked after we took back our seats. "She's Ashley's roommate. She's a human. A human. It means you'll have to be patient." I nodded in understanding. "But regardless of what she is, she's one of ours now." "I know. I haven't told anyone yet. Ashley, Zach, and Sam are the only ones who know, and I'll tell Jason tonight." My father scratched his beard. "Good. What do you plan on doing?" "I'll take it slow." I shrugged. "And I'll keep quiet about it until the time is right for me to tell her." He slowly nodded. "All right. Let me know if something comes up." "Okay." I rose. "Good night, then." "Good night, son." I walked to the door. Just as I put my hand on the knob, my dad's teasing voice stopped me. "I'll be present in the opening ceremony." "I expect to be introduced then." I groaned inwardly, waving a hand over my shoulder before exiting the office. My heart was lighter on the run back to my cabin. The brief absence of pain in my father's eyes gave me hope. Moonlight poked through the trees, illuminating my way. Not that I needed any with my wolf vision. I shifted on the spell's borders, dressed, then walked the rest of the way to my cabin. My eyes flickered to the windows of the cabin next door. The lights were on. They must have gone to dinner already. It was a shame I couldn't be there. I shook my head and went inside. Zach and Ashley were glued to each other on the couch. Jason was next to them, and Sam was sprawled on an armchair, his cheek on his fist, looking both bored and amused at the same time. Jason stood up and dipped his head. "Your Majesty." I took the other armchair and motioned for him to take a seat. Jason was a loyal wolf, and a very strong warrior. I knew him for years and planned on making him the next master-at-arms. Right now, as a senior, he helped keep a close eye on things in the midst of students. I briefed him about Orla, Zach said. "Good. No one knows, except the people present here and my father. And we're keeping it that way for now," I said, looking at all of them. "Sam, I would appreciate it if you keep an eye on things on the vampire side around here. Don't worry about it," he said with a smile that revealed sharp fangs. "No one will come near her." "Good. Because if anyone does, I'll deal with it personally. And they'll be asking for death by the time I'm done with them." I looked at Jason. "Jason, keep your eyes open. If the news somehow got out or if there's any talk going around about this, I want to know about it," I said. "Also, I don't know how some students might take to her spending time with us. I want to know if there is displeasure about it among the ranks of werewolf students. Understood?" He nodded, his green eyes sharp. I didn't like the way some students had been looking at her, disapproval in their eyes. As if a mere human shouldn't be walking with their future king. Some supernaturals were biased against humans. I just hoped nothing would come out of it. I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, feeling the dampness of my hair seep into my sleep t-shirt. But I was too tired to move. I never knew I could be too tired to sleep. After coming back from dinner, I bid Ashley goodnight and came to my room. Unpacking didn't take me long. My clothes only filled half the walk-in closet. Then I took a quick shower and dropped on my bed, expecting to drift off to sleep immediately. That didn't happen. I turned my head and looked at the curtained window, and I could no longer keep my thoughts from drifting to him. Ezra. I turned on my side and pulled the covers tighter around myself. I never thought I'd find a guy so attractive it left me sleepless. It was absolutely ridiculous. And true. But he was such a mystery to me. He didn't speak more than a few words, not out of aloofness. I had a feeling it was just how he was. He could come off as cold and standoffish, especially with his constantly unamused face, but his eyes betrayed him. Those warm brown eyes were so intense and expressive. Whenever I looked at them, I had the absurd feeling I could see right through them. So much sadness and pain. Even remembering it now tightened my throat. Then they would glimmer with such fierce hope and longing it took my breath away. How could I tell how he felt? It was absolutely ridiculous. Again. But I knew to the depths of my soul it was true. I could read his eyes like I could read another person's face. I'd been looking forward to seeing him at dinner, but he hadn't been there, much to my disappointment. I really wanted to see him again. What the heck was wrong with me? I don't even know the guy. At least I was honest enough with myself to admit I was attracted to him. How could I not? The guy was stunning. I sighed dreamily. God, I was acting like a hormonal teenager, which I technically was. I had had a few crushes back in high school, but it never amounted to anything. My school life had never been the best. Boys had been the last thing on my mind. I glanced at my phone on the nightstand. There were no missed calls, no messages. I swallowed the lump in my throat and closed my eyes. I'd call her in the morning. Yes, I'd do that. It was hard to believe that I wasn't home, that I'd be living on my own starting today. Well, not exactly on my own, since I had a roommate. My eyelids grew heavy, and I drifted to sleep to the sound of howling in the distance, a pair of warm brown eyes invading my dreams. This was not a good beginning of the day. I rushed down the steps, struggling to pull on my sneakers. I had woken up late after not hearing my alarm go off. Ashley had told me yesterday not to wait for her for breakfast because she went exercising first thing in the morning. No wonder the girl was impossibly fit. I wished I could be half as motivated. I rushed to the dining hall, adjusting the red hoodie I wore over my gray joggings and hoping I wasn't too late for breakfast. Meals began and ended at specific times. I checked my phone. 10 minutes left. Students strolled around or just lounged in the grass. Some lingered in the common room under the dining hall. I ran up the stairs and breathed out a sigh of relief. The line only had a couple of people, but the tables were mostly all occupied. I guess I wasn't the only one who didn't wake up early. The dining hall stretched in front of me, a large space lined with square tables covered in white cloth. A path cut through the middle of the room between the tables. On the far right of the room, a buffet was laid out. I grabbed a tray and a couple of plates and piled on food. I was ravenous, and the smells made my mouth water. Pancakes, scrambled eggs, sausages, and orange juice. That should be enough. I spied chocolate muffins. Ooh, I'd take one. Or two. Happy with my collection. I scanned the dining hall for any familiar faces. Ashley would be exercising, but maybe Sam would be here. I enjoyed his company more than I liked to admit. There was no Sam in sight, but I spotted Sarah, the girl Ashley introduced me to yesterday. There were no empty tables, and she'd been nice, so I gathered my courage and made my way to her, all the while my heart fluttered. Stop worrying. This isn't my old town. She was sitting with a couple of girls. I smiled when I met her eyes and put my tray on the table. Good morning, I said. Her responding smile was tight. I hesitated before sitting down. Maybe I was just imagining it. Maybe I didn't know her well enough. Hey, she said, her eyes flickering to her friends. I smiled at the two other girls. Morning. One of them waved back, albeit hesitantly, while the other just scoffed and glared at me. I blinked, shocked. What the heck? She pushed her blonde hair back, her gloss-covered lips pulled down into an unpleasant frown, and stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. She picked up her tray. The other two girls followed suit. Gosh, can't even have a peaceful breakfast without one of them sticking around, the blonde hissed, walking away. I stared after them in shock. Wow. Okay. What the heck had just happened? I shook my head and focused on my food. I guess nothing had changed, whether it was my old town or here. I purged the thought away. No, Ashley and the others were very nice to me. If Sarah and her girlfriends didn't like me, for whatever reason, they had a right to. I didn't have to be everyone's friend. What did Blondie mean, though, when she said one of them? After breakfast, I decided to explore a bit. The campus was quite big. It had almost everything you could think of. There was even a grocery store. A good idea, since the entire school was practically in the middle of the woods, far from any form of civilization. I made a mental note to visit the grocery shop later. I didn't have any food in the cabin. Everything there belonged to Ashley. I ended up walking behind the cabins on our street. I reached our backyard and stopped. All the backyards were connected together, only separated by small green bushes that I could easily step over. My eyes flickered to the cabin next door, Ezra and Zach's cabin. I looked toward the woods. The line of trees was about 30 yards from the back of the cabins. My feet carried me there. I used to take long walks in the woods in my old town, one of the rare times when I would be at peace. I missed its blissful quiet. Since the day wasn't shaping up to be the best so far, a walk in the woods was just the thing to pick up my mood. The ground crunched under my shoes as I walked deeper into the woods. The sky was clear today, and the sun shone through the tree canopy, bright and warm. A few stubborn strands escaped my braid, tickling my face and neck. I pushed them back, slowing my steps and taking deep breaths. This felt nice. A small movement. I turned toward the noise. A small, fluffy tail poked through a bush, wagging back and forth. My eyes widened. I sneaked toward it, slowly. My attention was on the tail and not the ground. My clumsy feet tripped on their own, and I fell hard on my knees and palms. Ow! I hissed at the pain. I quickly glanced at the bush, where, instead of a tail, the cute face of a gray puppy stared at me with its big eyes. Its pointed ears flickered back and forth. Just as I made a move to stand up, the puppy disappeared behind the bush, and I could hear its small paws hitting the ground as it dashed away. I quickly scrambled to my feet, wanting to follow it, but I could no longer see it. It was so adorable, I mumbled, dejected. My palms and knees prickled. They were scratched and bleeding a little. My joggings were even torn at the knees. Great. Just great. I made my way back to my cabin. Just as I opened the back door, someone gasped. Ashley! What happened to you? Ashley shouted, abandoning her seat in the living room where Ezra, Sam, and Zach were seated. Embarrassed, I gave her a smile, glancing down at my knees. I sort of tripped, I said, as Ashley came closer and looked at my palms. Don't worry, they're just scratches. But I cringed after I said that. One of my knees was actually still bleeding. I guess a twig poked too deep. Tingles. I almost jumped. Wide-eyed, I looked at Ezra, whose warm hands enveloped mine, holding my palms up. He glanced at me, then back down at my palms. Tingles. Was I just imagining it? Maybe I was just lightheaded because of the blood loss. Yeah, that must be it. Ezra frowned, his thumb brushing mine. Blood rushed to my cheeks, and I couldn't breathe properly. His eyes met mine again, and the concern in them was intense. I quickly looked down, my hand still in his. Ash, first aid kit? He asked in his deep voice. There's one in my bathroom. Help yourselves, Ashley said in a chipper tone. She looked immensely amused, her lips pulled into a smug grin. Ezra held one of my hands in his and pulled me gently toward the stairs. Wait. I can take care of it on my own. I rushed out, looking at his broad back, then at the others, who all looked to be enjoying themselves. Sam wiggled his eyebrows. I narrowed my eyes at him, but my feet still followed Ezra. He squeezed my hand. I glanced at him. He quirked an eyebrow. Look in front of you. You'll trip again. Red-faced. All I could do was follow him up the stairs. The tingles were making my head a little bit foggy. A good sort of foggy. Ezra's hand was gentle and loose. I could have slipped my hand from his any time I wanted, but I didn't. Why? When we were in Ashley's bathroom, he motioned for me to take a seat on the toilet seat. He found the first aid kit in the cupboard under the sink, then crouched in front of me with it open on the ground next to him. I rolled up my pants to reveal my knees, wincing at the sight. They looked as bad as my palms, maybe worse. The antiseptic stung when Ezra wiped my knees with it. I bit my lip. Ezra glanced up. Does it sting? It's okay, I said. He was speaking more today. Sorry. I blinked at the naked emotion in his eyes. His frown deepened when he saw the blood-covered wipe. Why was he apologizing? He finished with the antiseptic, applied a cream that felt refreshingly cool against my skin. Then he cut the gauze and secured it with tape on my knees. Hands, he said, holding out one of his. His large palm felt so warm against the back of my hand. He repeated the same process for both of my palms, working in silence. All finished, he held both of my hands in his, inspecting his work. His thumbs brushed against the skin of my inner wrists as he looked up at me and whispered, "Done." My heartbeat skyrocketed and all the blood rushed to my face. The tingles drove me insane, but I didn't take my hands back. I didn't want to take my hands back. "Thank you," I whispered back. His eyes swirled with so many conflicting emotions. They spoke more words than he did. Warm pools of dark, bittersweet chocolate. "You guys done yet?" "It's lunchtime." I jumped 10 feet into the air, wrenching my gaze away from Ezra to where Sam was leaning against the doorframe with a smirk, his hands shoved in the pockets of his jeans. Ezra let go of my hands and stood up. I felt instantly cold. Then he held out his hand to me. "Come on." I looked between his eyes and his hand. Then I took his hand. I ignored Sam's Cheshire grin. He whistled a familiar melody as he followed us down the stairs. Zach and Ashley were grinning from ear to ear. It wasn't until I let go of Ezra downstairs that the melody Sam was whistling registered in my brain. It was the music that brides walked down the aisle to. I covered my face with both hands. Oh my God, I was going to kill Sam. The dining hall buzzed with activity at lunchtime. The racket of cutlery and students overpowered the faint sound of music playing in the background. Heavenly flavors floated in the air, making me hasten my steps toward the buffet table. Unfortunately, I was still full from breakfast, so I settled for a piece of baked salmon and a few potato croquettes. Then there was the most adorable chocolate dessert ever. A little mouse made of dark chocolate. Its big white ears were made of cut almonds, and a cherry stem poked out of it as a tail. It was so well done I almost felt bad about eating it. Almost. The chefs were really out to impress. Considering the amount of time and effort it would have taken them to make hundreds of those chocolate mice, one would think they were cooking for royalty. The 5 of us took a table in the corner. Most students turned when we walked by, looking at Ezra. Maybe it was because he was a member of the student council, or maybe because he was just really attractive. Both were very valid reasons. Everyone hurried to take their seats, leaving me to sit between Ashley and Ezra. It almost seemed as if they were doing it on purpose. Considering their behavior so far, they were going to great lengths to play matchmaker, something to which I wasn't accustomed. I glanced at Ezra. Was I the only one who felt this odd attraction? He glanced at me with a raised brow, and I quickly looked at my food. I didn't have much experience with this, so for the sake of my sanity, I would just ignore it. For now, the gauze around my palms was so well done I barely felt it as I ate. I was halfway through my meal when Zach and Ezra picked up their empty plates and went for a refill. I had noticed it yesterday too. They had hearty appetites. Sam was the exception, however. He would nibble on what little he had on his plate and drink wine. Way too much wine, in my opinion. "Don't you get drunk?" I asked, puzzled, tilting my head at Sam, who sat next to Zach across from me. He chuckled, tipping his glass toward me. "I'm a heavyweight." Zach let out a loud cough, and Ashley shook her head next to me. I frowned. "Well, you shouldn't drink too much. It's not healthy." "Are you worried about me, Little Red?" he asked, his hand on his heart. I rolled my eyes. "Am not." "You are," he said in a sing-song voice. "Am not," I protested. "Come on, just admit it." He winked, his devious eyes flickering toward Ezra for a moment. "I know you're secretly in love with me." The loud sound of glass shattering made me jump. I whipped my head toward Ezra, whose plates and glass were shattered to pieces. His hands were closed into tight fists on either side of his tray. His jaw was clenched as he glared down at his plates. He looked up slowly toward Sam, his eyes livid. I swear his eyes seemed brighter than usual. Sam looked at him with a quirked brow, his lips twitched up slightly. Then he rolled his eyes and looked away. My heart beat fast and hard. My hands shook, and I didn't know why. I was scared. Then I noticed the sudden, blood-chilling silence. No clattering, no chit-chat, no movement. The air itself seemed frozen. The faint notes of music in the background suddenly sounded ominous. I glanced around, wide-eyed. Zach and Ashley were looking down and slightly to the side. Almost everyone in the hall assumed the same position, though there were very few confused faces like mine. "What the?" Throat dry. I looked at Sam, whose eyes were down, but he sipped his wine without a care in the world. Then at Ezra, whose head was held up, eyes closed and shoulders moving with his deep breaths. His eyes opened and met mine, no doubt wide and confused and panic-stricken. His face softened, and his hand moved up slowly, as if not to startle me. He brushed a few wisps of hair off my cheek, the brief contact leaving my skin warm and tingling. The knot in my stomach settled at the feather-like touch, and my fear melted away with my surroundings. He was quiet, yet his eyes spoke volumes. So much affection and hope and longing, it reached right into my heart and filled it to the brim. His hand dropped, and my surroundings snapped back into focus. I blinked, hot-faced and completely clueless. Ezra cleared his throat and looked ahead of him. Whoever pressed pause earlier now pressed play, and activity resumed in the hall as if it had never stopped. People went back to eating and talking. I looked around, perplexed and slightly freaked out. And before I could make sense of what had just happened, Ezra and Sam picked up their trays wordlessly and left. "What? How? What?" I looked between Zach and Ashley. They focused on eating, their eyes refusing to meet mine. I cleared my throat loudly. "What was that?" I asked. "How did those plates shatter like that?" Zach sighed and glanced at Ashley. "Well," he said, giving me a bright smile. "The food was too hot, maybe. It could happen." I blinked for a few seconds, then shook my head to clear my thoughts. But his glass, it had orange juice. "It was too cold, I guess," Zach said, making me gape at him. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Ashley cover her eyes. "What? That doesn't make sense," I said. "What about the sudden silence, and why were you all—" "Hey, look at the time," Zach said, shooting to his feet. "We're late. We need to go. Are you all finished?" Ashley nodded vigorously and stood up, giving me a smile. "Let's go." I slowly nodded and stood up with my tray, following the two and glancing around the dining hall. Everything seemed normal. It was as if I imagined everything. Maybe I was just reading too much into the atmosphere earlier. Maybe I'd overreacted? Maybe. We walked in suffocating silence toward our cabins. The longer we walked under the bright sun, the laughter of students around us, and the soft breeze in my hair, the more everything around me seemed normal, and I began thinking that maybe I'd been reading too much into the atmosphere earlier. Maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe. We walked down our street, and right in front of our cabin stood 3 figures. Ezra, Sam, and another girl. Ashley broke into a grin and jogged up to the girl, pulling her into a hug. The girl's almond-shaped eyes swung to me as Zach and I strolled their way. They were a soft hazel that stood out against dark brown skin. The tips of her long, curly black hair were dyed bright purple. Dressed in a brightly colored floral maxi dress, she stood almost as tall as Ashley. She grinned at me. Her smile lit up her eyes. "Hey, there." "Hi." I smiled. "Orla, this is Haley," Ashley said. "Haley, my roommate Orla. Nice to meet you," Haley said, tilting her head to the side and looking intently at my eyes. "Are they natural or are you wearing contact lenses?" Sam facepalmed loudly next to her. "Why in the world would she wear mismatched lenses, Hales? Seriously." "Shut it, Sam." She glared at him. He rolled his eyes and she pointed a finger at them. "I hope they get stuck like that one day." Sam muttered a curse under his breath. I couldn't help but smile. I had a feeling Haley and I would get along just fine. "No, they're not lenses," I answered. Her eyes widened and she brought her face close to mine. "They're so pretty." I shifted on my feet, feeling blood rise to my face. Thanks. "Let's get inside," Ezra suddenly said, his voice tight. Haley aimed her sunny grin his way. "So, how's your cousin, Haley?" Ashley said as we all filed in behind her inside our cabin. "Did she make any friends?" "Good, and I don't even know why she insisted so much on being roommates with me," Haley said, dropping on the couch in a dramatic fashion. "She's faring perfectly fine on her own. I haven't seen her since we settled down in our cabin yesterday." Ashley, huddled next to Zach in one of the armchairs, looked at me. Haley and I were roommates, but she switched this year to be with her freshman cousin. Ezra took the other armchair, and I sat between Haley and Sam on the couch. Haley smiled. I guess it all turned out for the best, after all. Haley was a burst of positive energy. She was the missing puzzle of the group, filling in our usual 6-seat table at dinner. She put Sam in his place more times than I thought possible, and she was as playful as he was. She even teased Ezra a couple of times, which shocked me so much the first time she did it, I almost choked on my drink. After we bid each other good night, I closed myself in my room, sat on my bed, and looked at my phone. No notification. It hadn't rung once since I got here. Not that it had rung much back home either. The only person who still contacted me was Uncle Terry, my father's brother. But it had been a while since I had heard from him as well. He would usually check on me on holidays, but it wasn't his call I was waiting for all day. I opened my contact list, my finger hovering over the call button. I hit call, my heart in my throat. Ring, ring, ring. It went to voicemail. I tried again and again, but she didn't answer. The disappointment weighed on my chest like a boulder, but maybe she was just busy. I called again, deciding to leave her a message. "Hey, Mom. It's me. Orla," I said, my fingers picking at the comforter. "How are you and Alex doing?" I just wanted to say that I settled down here. The campus is really cool, you know. And my roommate is nice." I trailed off, not sure what to say exactly. "I love you, Mom," I added before cutting the line. I curled on my bed and looked at the phone in my hand. A lump grew in my throat, refusing to go away no matter how much I swallowed. My eyes stung. The stubborn tears spilled, wetting the comforter. I closed my eye tightly and rubbed a fist against my breastbone, but I couldn't ease away the pain and the overwhelming guilt. I didn't really blame her. I didn't blame my mother. Even if she never spoke to me again, even if she told me to never show my face again, I would understand. After all, I was the one who took him away from her. From us, I was the reason my father was gone. Days passed by in a comfortable routine. I mostly had breakfast on my own, though Haley sometimes appeared to keep me company, for which I was grateful. I didn't approach Sarah again after that first time, and I couldn't help but notice some of the hostile looks a few students threw my way. It was probably because I was hanging around Ezra and the others. I could think of no other reason. After breakfast, I often took a stroll through the woods on my own, then spent the rest of the day with the other 5 who I was now happy to call my friends. Well, make that 4. I had no idea what to make of Ezra. He was silent most of the time, almost brooding, but always by my side. By the time Friday rolled around, it was scary how quickly I got used to his quiet, warm presence next to me, and how I looked forward to seeing him every morning. Sometimes, our eyes would meet, and an electric jolt would run through my veins. Those dark eyes were loud, swirling with so many emotions. Some I recognized, others I didn't dare to. It was now Friday, the day of the opening ceremony right before the official beginning of classes next Monday. After breakfast, I skipped my usual morning walk and went back to find Ashley and Haley in our cabin. "Morning, gorgeous," Haley chirped, sitting by the island, the folds of her full floral skirt touching the ground. The long-sleeved yellow shirt she tucked into the skirt set off her beautiful skin. Ashley was stirring her coffee mug, leaning against the counter and dressed in a crisp white pantsuit and tan wedges, her hair waving around her shoulders. "Morning," I smiled, looking at Ashley's formal getup. "What's the occasion?" She sighed and took a big gulp of her coffee. "Opening ceremony?" she grumbled. "Ashley here is part of the student council. You know that, right?" Haley asked. I nodded. She stood up and threw an arm around my shoulders. "Which means she's going to be stuck with the others organizing the thing. You and I will take our time getting ready while she runs around like a headless chicken." I bit back a laugh. Ashley stuck her tongue at Haley. "Traitor." She looked at her watch and downed the rest of her coffee, wincing at the end. "Time for me to go." She put the mug in the sink and smoothed a hand down her suit jacket. "It's at 10. Don't be late, girls." So I wouldn't see Ezra until then. The emptiness that thought caused me took me by surprise. Fortunately, Haley didn't leave me to my thoughts for long. She dragged me upstairs to my room and raided my closet, when she didn't deem my clothes proper, which were all casual, I had to admit. She dragged me along to Ashley's closet. "The code is semi-formal," Haley said, flipping through the clothes hung in Ashley's closet. I hovered in the doorway, unsure. "Are you sure Ashley won't mind?" I asked Haley. "It's okay. She doesn't mind," she said absent-mindedly, picking a dress off the racks and looking it over with a critical eye. "How do you know?" I asked her. She replied, putting the dress back. "When did you ask her?" "You've been with me the whole time," I said, looking around the packed closet. I asked her before you came back from breakfast." "Yeah, before," she said, flipping through the clothes more quickly. She brightened, pulling a hanger from the rack and holding it up for me to see. "What do we think?" It was a formal dress. I eyed it suspiciously. Ashley was taller and more slender than I was. "Yeah, I don't think that's going to fit." Haley frowned. "I think it will." "Nope," I said. "I eat way too much chocolate for it too." She chuckled and put it back. "Never a bad thing, babe," she said. We finally decided on an airy chiffon shirt in a frost shade. It was difficult to find a color that wouldn't clash with my red hair. I tucked the top in a pair of my own jeans and borrowed a pair of comfortable white wedges from Ashley's closet. I ran my fingers through my hair and called it a day. It would just revert to its usual unruly waves no matter how I styled it, unless I straightened it, which would take too much effort and time for my taste. Haley and I hit the door. The road between the living cabins and class buildings cut through the woods. There wasn't a car in sight. Students moved on foot in a mass exodus toward the auditorium where the opening ceremony would be held. Around the building, students lurked, chatting and laughing in no hurry to go inside. I checked my phone. There were still 10 minutes left. Haley linked our arms and dragged me inside the building, her eyes unusually bright. They almost glowed once we were in the shade inside. "Come on, I want front seats," Haley said. Our heels clicked on the black-veined beige marble. I glanced around the entrance hall. With abstract paintings hung around, plants and statues in every corner and glimmering lights overhead, it looked fancier than anywhere I'd been before. Students lounged around in the seating arrangements strategically placed about. Some stared as Haley and I walked to the auditorium. The place was massive. We were among the first few arrivals. We went down the steps, the tiered black seats mostly empty, to find Sam already seated right in front of the stage. "Are you sure we can sit here?" I asked Haley in a whisper as we walked toward Sam. The front seats looked different compared to the other chairs. They were very comfortably cushioned armchairs. "Shouldn't professors or VIPs sit there or something?" Haley laughed. "Oh, yes. In fact, we must sit right here, in front of the stage where you can ogle Ezra all you want." She wiggled her eyebrows. My face exploded. "I'm not ogling him," I grumbled. Sam patted the seat next to him. "I saved you a seat, Little Red." I looked pointedly at the row of empty chairs. He didn't save us anything. All the seats were free. Sam grinned and winked as I sank into the chair, Haley on my other side. The raised stage in front of us was set up with several chairs and a podium to the side. A door on either side of it must lead backstage. Minutes later, the auditorium filled with the chit-chat of students as they trickled in at once. Only a few other students sat at the front. The majority of the front row was occupied by faculty members. I shifted in my seat, feeling oddly out of place. I wanted to get up and move to another seat in the middle of the auditorium where I could blend in with the other students. "What is it?" Sam asked next to me. I glanced at him. His blue eyes looked serious for once. I shrugged and looked down the front row. "I feel like someone is going to come and tell me I shouldn't sit here," I said with a smile. "It feels weird. Can I just go sit with the other students?" He raised a black eyebrow, mirth back to his eyes. "Haley and I are students too, you know." "I know, but you," I said. I didn't even know what that meant exactly, but Sam and Haley had been friends with Ezra and the others for a long time, so I guess it wouldn't be weird for them to be up front. I felt like an interloper. "Believe me, Orla," Sam said with a playful grin. "No one will tell you to move elsewhere. You have more right to be here than you think." My forehead scrunched up. What does that even mean? Sudden silence fell on the place. I looked around right as everyone stood at the same time. I followed suit, glancing at Haley, whose back was straight and face was serious, her eyes lowered. Almost everyone assumed that same position. I was the only one swinging my head around like a fool, so I looked ahead of me. People came in through the backstage door, and the silence in the hall turned even more solemn. If that was possible. An older man entered first, and my breath caught in my throat. He was dressed in a black suit, his hair waved over his head and a short beard covering his jaw, and he was the exact carbon copy of Ezra. There was no way he couldn't be his father. His confident stride and the dignified way he held himself reminded me of Ezra as well. It was majestic. Ezra Sr. was followed by another man around his age, whose features blurred like everything else when Ezra walked in behind him. I had to close my mouth. He always wore a t-shirt and jeans, so seeing him in a crisp black shirt and slacks was a novel experience. My throat turned dry and my heart skittered. He looked more striking than usual. Ashley and Zach followed him. Ezra Sr. sat in the middle chair, with the other man to his left and Ezra to his right, Ashley and Zach next to him. Sitting side by side, Ezra and his older version looked so much alike it was a little bit eerie, except for the eyes. There was something different about their eyes. Someone cleared their throat loudly, snapping me out of my daze. "Haley." I glanced around and immediately wished the ground would open and swallow me. While I was busy checking out Ezra, everyone had taken a seat. I was left standing like a tree in the desert. I dropped in my seat, wishing I could sink even lower. My face was so hot I knew I was blushing. That was so embarrassing. Haley and Sam's shoulders were shaking. Haley's face was buried in her hands, and Sam propped his elbow on the arm of his chair, his hand covering his grinning mouth. "Kill me now." After a few moments of dying, I looked up at the stage where another man stood by the podium, looking through sheets of paper. Ashley caught my eyes and winked. The man started talking, addressing the students.